Is the next Xbox PlayStation going to be more powerful than the next PlayStation Xbox? What's up everybody, Brad here back again, and a few questions have come in during the past couple weeks about, hey, which device is going to be more powerful? Next gen Xbox, next gen PlayStation, does it even matter? The questions just keep coming, and so I'm going to do a video here to link back to it because I think people are getting really caught up in details that may not matter all that much. Let's just talk about the known facts. Microsoft has said that the Scarlett console will do 4K at 60 frames per second, up to 120 frames per second. It'll have a next-gen SSD, which is 40 times faster than the old spinning Rust back there, 8K capable, and we all know that your stuff will travel with you, your profile and all that good stuff. On the PlayStation side, it's going to be 8 cores, Zen 2, and Navi graphics. Keep in mind, next Xbox will be Zen 2 and Navi graphics. It's going to have a really fast SSD. They've already started to show off the really super quick load times and 3D audio, whatever that means. It's whatever, 3D audio. So these consoles, you got to keep in mind, are using the base kind of same core components, right? They're all coming from AMD. They're all Zen 2. They're all Navi. I'm not expecting that the PS5 and the next gen Xbox to have a massive difference in performance. I bet they're going to be pretty close because, again, they're coming from the same parts bin, which makes a lot of sense, right? AMD is capable of building the complete suite, and so they're just going to the parts bin and saying, hey, give us this stuff. They're not doing anything crazy on the PlayStation side where they had a cell chip. That was a disaster long term for Sony, and they're not going down that route again. They're going to the PC model, which makes sense. But raw performance, is it really going to make a difference on either side? Knowing that the Scarlett console is already going to do 4K at 60 frames per second. That is the benchmark. That is the benchmark. I fully expect that the next gen PlayStation will absolutely be able to do that. Now, getting beyond 60 frames per second, the value diminishes significantly, right? Getting to 60 frames per second is a big deal. Like when you go from playing 30 frames per second on a console to 60 frames per second or higher on a PC with like VSync and all that good stuff, it is a big difference. And that experience is coming to the console, which is a good thing. There's a lot of people who play on consoles. There's also a lot of people who play on PC. Granted, I don't think that there's a lot of people who play heavily other than maybe RTS games on a PC and then go to a console for first-person shooter. Typically, and I know there's people, including myself, that jump back and forth, but primarily you're one or the other, right? And so for people on consoles, being able to go to from a 30 frames per second sort of 4K, maybe 1080p upscaled or even worse upscaled to 4K at 60 frames per second or higher is going to be a big deal. It's going to give you much better experience, and it's going to give you much better gameplay and fluidity in your experience. It's going to make the console a pretty significant jump. And to be able to do that for, say, roughly somewhere between $300 and $500 just out of the box, get up and play, that is a big deal from a console experience. PC gaming will always have the better edge and latest in graphics and all that, but it's also more complex. You have to worry about things like cooling, turning off and off VSync, making sure your monitor is correct, all that stuff. Consoles are designed for a simple experience. You walk up, turn the button on, hit A or X or whatever you want a couple times, and you're playing a game. PC games are a little bit more complex, but you get a better experience potentially depending on your rig. So when Platinum Games head came out and said, hey, next gen isn't super innovative, well, you got to take that with a little bit of salt, because coming from a pure console gamer, yeah, getting to 60 frames per second at 4K with HDR and hardware accelerated ray tracing, at least on the Xbox side, we're still waiting to hear on the PlayStation side, but I fully expect that is going to make a big difference. They're probably saying it's not innovative because you look at things like it doesn't have Kinect, it may not have PlayStation VR built in. We don't quite know on the VR side. I bet it supports it in some capacity, but it's not getting crazy. But we all know how the Kinect worked out, that people just like consoles to play games, nothing else. That is what they're good at. That is what they're designed for. And getting up to 60 frames per second is a big deal and beyond. Now, granted, both consoles here say they will do 8K, and I would just take that little 8K nugget and put it into a recycling bin and then drag it down to the street for the trash man to come take away. 8K gaming doesn't make a lot of sense. It's probably there because technically the HDMI spec that they're using will support 8K, but to come out and say you're going to do 8K gaming when 4K TVs are really just starting to catch on is a little crazy, but I guess it's a little bit of a future-proof thing. But I would not expect to be playing games at 8K because, again, the overhead compute and the size of the graphics package has to increase significantly to go from 4K to 8K. Think about how long it took us to get from 1080p to 4K gaming, and then to go from 4K to 8K, just whatever. So the question becomes, Who is more powerful, Xbox or PlayStation? Well, we've heard rumors from developers saying, hey, PlayStation's better or Xbox might be better. Matt Booty, in an interview with Bloomberg, said that the Scarlett console will absolutely be the most powerful immersive console on the market. Phil Spencer got a bit of flack for not going up on stage and saying, hey, we will have the most powerful console, like they did with the Scorpio or Xbox One X. That was a big deal, saying we will have the most powerful one. But Matt Booty is on the record saying they will have the most powerful console, and the question becomes how and who and knows what is going on. I've asked around. If you've watched this channel for a while, you know that I've been saying it's been Microsoft's intention ever since the beginning to have the most powerful next-gen console. Granted, do we absolutely know that yet? No, and I don't think anybody truly does. There might be some people at AMD who have it, maybe some game developers who can look at it, but the final specs, I would be very surprised on either side, Xbox or PlayStation, haven't fully locked down because we're still dealing with things like, hey, chip yield, right? We're waiting to see, or those companies are waiting to see what the yield is actually coming out of AMD. Then they've got to look at things like clock speed, and they've got to look at things like cooling and RAM speed and all this stuff. There's so many different parts that go into all this, and we are more than a year away. More than a year. Yes, I bet they are giving raw or rough specifications to game developers saying, hey, target this. But I don't think that they are at the point yet of saying this is exactly it's going to get 12.2 T-flops or something like that. That seems very premature at this time. And Microsoft, I know for a fact, is still working through the specs, and the software and the optimization is going to be so key to all of this. So when you hear things like, hey, a game developer says, hey, it's more powerful, all that stuff, I wouldn't take too much of this with a grain of, with, pure accuracy. There's a lot of things that still have to materialize, and I fully expect that both companies will eventually obviously reveal this sometime next year, but up until that point, it's going to be a lot of speculation and insider information. So just at this point, guys, just know that 4K 60 frames per second is what the next gen consoles are going to do. That is the benchmark, and beyond that isn't going to give you too much of an advantage, right? Keep that in mind for the next gen stuff. That's all you need to know.